thanks very much for the intro. As you say, my name is Craig Lynn. I am one of the co-founders and innovation director at Filament. So we're a product design and kind of innovation agency based in Glasgow, and we focus a lot around using kind of connected products, smart products to solve kind of new, interesting problems. So our kind of mission is that we look at creating tech-driven products that have a positive impact on people on the planet. So everything we're doing, we're looking at that. How can we do something better? How can we enhance people's lives? How can we use technology and use design to kind of tackle some of the bigger challenges that we're facing right now? And we do this across a wide range of products. Here's just a couple of examples of it. It ranges from robotic lawnmowers to security devices for the financial industry, self-service coffee machines, circular economy systems for clean water, and everything in between. So it certainly kind of keeps our days interesting. But what I'm here to talk to you today about is the kind of power of play and kind of looking at kind of design for behaviour change. So, as I said, everything we're looking at is under the lens of how do we create positive impact. So how do we change people's behaviours to create better lives? And one thing that we've been doing a lot around over the past couple of years is looking at different types of play and kind of interactions to help kind of facilitate some of this. So going back to my childhood, it looked a lot like this. If you're a designer who is probably 35 plus, you would probably had a kind of similar background. It was all about just a big bucket of Lego, tipping it out on the floor and just playing and creating and solving problems. And I probably owe a big part to what I do today with this upbringing. It was pre-internet, pre-smartphone, pre-tech, but this was a really good platform for kind of teaching, I guess, the kind of foundations of product design, mechanical engineering, problem solving, and kind of looking to tackle that. Now, my play journey obviously has ended up where I am today, whereas a lot of what we do in the studio is still kind of creative play-based to try and come up with solutions. But what's really happened over the past a couple of years is that this little guy came into my life. This is my son Oscar, and what it's kind of done for myself and my co-founders, who have also became dads at the same time, is we've done the typical design thing of all of a sudden we're like, oh yeah, we could design better baby products. We could design better toys. We could look at, so it's looking at your kind of environment and your situation and trying to kind of make it better. And what that's done from a play point of view is it's really made me kind of question the power of kind of play, the power of interaction, and applying it to different types of technology. So how can you take some of these lessons and apply it into the medical sector for wearables? How can you apply it into kind of the industrial sector? And there's this really interesting book which I kind of read. It's called The Power of Play, and it's talking about the history of play, the psychology of play, and what it can kind of really do to help I guess kind of forge the kind of creative minds of the future. So one interesting thing is that when you look at the synaptic density of the human brain, so these are the potential connections that can be made. A child actually has probably double the amount of synapses, the potential connections, while they're between 3 and 7, and then as they get older, it starts to degrade. Now, this is something that kind of scientists call synaptic pruning. So it's the brain's ability to just go, I don't need that anymore. Let's get rid of that. Let's optimize. Let's tidy up a little bit. But what I mean, I'm not a scientist, but what I think it is that you're actually starting to get kind of the real world, basically weighing down on you, and the ability for you to be playful, be creative, starts to kind of wean. And why does it matter? Why does it matter about kind of maintaining that play, that interaction now more than ever? Well, I don't know if you noticed, but the world is going to shit. There are so many big challenges, everything from climate change through to potential global wars, supply chain shortage, food shortage. We're at a point where we really do need to make a change and make a difference. And COP26 was in my hometown of Glasgow. And I sat in a room with fellow designers discussing the intricacies of language and how we should tackle this, and it was such a frustrating day. Basically, we just need action. We need things to change. We need to basically design interventions, monitor those interventions, and optimise. So there's a really interesting quote from Charles Eames. So he always kind of said that toys are not really as innocent as they look. Toys and games are precursors to serious ideas. And we've really kind of taken this on board and looked at various projects and how we can kind of use that mechanism of play to try and teach people better habits about sustainability, teach people better habits about healthy eating, about kind of managing money, and about kind of managing, air quality and environment. What does play allow you to do? Well, it allows you to kind of choose different paths. So if you think of this is your brain's process, and it can be everything from talking. You start off, you have then multiple options which you can follow up, and then more options and more options. So this is your mind is constantly doing this. And as I said, people tend to be habitual. They tend to kind of resort to what is known and what is easy. And what that often means is that you have so many potential paths, but you end up repeating the same, small percentage of them over and over again. So as I said, I used to talk about this and say people are habitual, but really it's adults that are habitual. Anyone that has a kid realises there are no habits there whatsoever. So user behaviour often flows the path of least resistance. You can introduce design and technologies, interventions, you can place in little interventions along the way that kind of kick the person off the path. But ultimately what happens is if those interventions disappear, then natural habits come back, the same behaviour is maintained. Now, great design is closed loop. So this is when sensing, this is when data, this is when that feedback loop becomes really important, because what you can do is you can then actually alter the path of people's habits and behaviours. So, something like the Fitbit is a great example of this. You wear it, you have constant reminders, updates, you have streaks, you have gamification, and it does alter people's behaviour. Ultimately what happens is if the battery runs out or you get fed up of it, it goes in a drawer and people will just go back to that standard path. So it's about that kind of constant maintenance and constant kind of intervention that you kind of need. Now, so coming back to this, the possibilities, so your start point's up here, no intervention takes you there. If you start to kind of add in design interventions, and as I say, it can kind of kick you off the path slightly, but ultimately there is the risk that you go back to that as soon as it finishes. What play allows you to do is almost kind of do that kind of seismic change of kicking you down a completely different path, applying kind of creative thinking, applying different kind of logic to it, and just a bit of fun to take you into a whole different kind of realm of possibilities. Now, I guess, how do we harness the power of play then? So, plays, from a psychology point of view, it's really interesting because, play, the fun of play comes from limiting freedom rather than expanding it. So they always talk about this, playing games, they create this metaphoric playpen around the child, which then draws their attention in, so it's a much safer, stable place for them to learn, but also creates a really interesting kind of mechanism for adults and kids alike, because it allows them that safe space to be kind of creative, to be a little bit disruptive and look at things slightly differently. Now, again, if you look, so there's different types of play. If you plot this on a graph, you've kind of got ludus play, which is play with boundaries, rules, defined outcomes. Do you win, do you lose, do you get points? All the way through to pediac play, which is just explorative, free, and just for the hell of it. And then if you map that on a y-axis between finite and infinite play has an end goal, has a timer, has an end state. Infinite play is basically over when the player decides that they've had enough. And I guess what you can see within this in terms of a lot of studies is that kids who are happy up in this zone here are generally the creative thinkers, the problem solvers later in life. So it's always a good way to kind of foster that. You always need a balance of different types, but it's always that kind of end goal of pushing to the top. So yeah, some examples are, ludus, finite play, goal-based, gamification, you do this, you win points, there's a timer, it ends, you've got a leaderboard. Then, Pediac Finite is kind of storytelling, so that's slightly more kind of creative, talking you through, changing things. You're moving into the leaderboards, as I said, that kind of, okay, it's infinite because you're always competing against yourself to try and kind of better, but effectively it is a defined goal. And then, as I said, free play. Free play is the way of fostering those kind of creative minds. And Lego was a great example of this, coming back to it. So Lego, back in the day, used to actually give this out as an instruction guide. And it was basically just telling people to build what you want, do what you want, be creative, be free, and effectively just use this as a platform for exploration. Now, mapping that's, so Lego of the 80s was up in this space. Now, where are we now with Lego? Well, effectively, it's gone the completely opposite way. You've got an inventory, you've got step-by-step instructions, so effectively you're not playing anymore, you're just being like a construction worker for the Sith. So you're right down here in this area. And it's almost like this shift has kind of happened, this shift of, allowing that kind of playfulness has moved down as we've kind of grown up. And it leaves this kind of grey area in the middle, which is a really kind of, it's an opportunity for design, it's an opportunity for innovation. And Lego last year actually identified that, and they've released this new product, which is called Lego City Missions. So it's really interesting because it combines that kind of ludus play. So you have instructions to build a vehicle of sorts, and then you have a smartphone tablet application which takes you through missions, takes you through storytelling, and it gets to a certain point and it says, okay, the spaceship has landed on the planet, there is some big piece of debris that you need to clear. Go into, and they give you a bucket full of just random bits. They say, go into that and just create something which will help you through this next part of the mission. So that's the kind of combining that kind of structured play with the free play. And I think what's really interesting in this is that you leveraging the kind of technology, leveraging that kind of smart products in a sense, allows for some quite kind of interesting models and solutions to come out of that. So this is kind of where we kind of come on to leveraging design and technology for play. Why is it important? Because play is an amazing leveler between different generations. You only need to see a toddler teaching a grandparent about Minecraft, and you'll understand that it totally levels all generations on that. And it's really interesting from a behaviour change point of view, because what actually you find is that if an adult teaches a child a new habit, a new tip, a new technique, then they're actually 60% more likely to adopt that themselves. So if you think about that from healthy eating, sustainable practices, if you're able to design that into an interaction, then you've got a much higher level of kind of ongoing adoption. Parents are also scared. They don't know how to do things. So often, when you ask people about how do you be sustainable, they scratch their head and they don't know themselves. Then they are trying to teach kids. So it's often this kind of handoff of like, well, I'll allow someone else to teach my child that because I don't actually know myself. So play, again, it's this safe space. It's this place that allows parents and children to kind of learn together to increase that adoption. And I think the interesting thing about technology is you keep getting pushbacks on technologies. You want to kind of limit screen time because everything has just gone completely digital. But there are massive benefits of this. You saw that Lego example, massive benefits of leveraging the technology, leveraging the interaction that you get with that, whilst kind of limiting that screen time so you're not solely focused on that. So where do you start? If you're signed up to this, if you're interested in exploring this, then what I kind of say is I'll start with the kind of the Asians, and I've split kind of play into 3 sections on this. So you've got exploration up here, which is just total free, looking at things in a different way, encouraging just that, creativity. You have personification. So how do you add characters to technology? How do you add characters to design to try and kind of facilitate that? And there's some quite interesting kind of psychology drivers on that. And then at the bottom, you've got your kind of standard gamification. So this is what most people kind of play in. This is where your Fitbits play in. They play in this kind of idea of games, points, streaks, just kind of continuing development. So we've got a couple of examples of what our kind of innovation team has been working on lately. I'll kind of talk you through them and tell you where the kind of the insight came from and what the kind of potential benefit is from. So this is around the kind of the exploration space. So this is a project that we were involved in. It was Innovate UK funded, and it was a really wide brief of how do you teach people better habits about sustainability, about source of materials, about source of ingredients. So we kind of come up with this idea that, so, the age-old thing is that often when you buy a present for a kid, they're more interested in the packaging than the actual what's inside it themselves. So we thought we'd leverage that and allow the person to kind of cut out a hole within the packaging, and then using a smartphone app, be able to see through that into another world. So be able to kind of see through that to see, what is the source of the materials, what is the source of the ingredients. Okay, the toy is made from a certain wood which is grown in a Scandinavian forest, which is sustainable. Okay, how do you then use play as a method of the kid understanding that? So they're able to see where the materials come from, they're able to see what the material does in terms of its use, and then they're able to fast forward into how do they recycle this properly and how do they move forward. So it's just that way of kind of using technology and using interaction in a slightly different way, and looking at it slightly different as in what the output of the product is to what a kind of an educational interactive element could be. And one caveat I would just say, if you do get involved in this, you're going to have to troll through a whole host of absolutely terrible royalty-free kids' music. So tread carefully. So we had this, it's this idea of kind of playing in 3D space. So you're superimposing a virtual world around the player, and then they're using that kind of lens of that hole within the packaging to be able to see through it. And you've got some really interesting kind of things that you can develop within this, because you can have it just as free play. So they're just looking through into another world and they can use their own imagination. But for older kids, you can then start to build in almost kind of like hide and seek type games to it. So they have to find characters dotted around this virtual space, and when they find them, they give them information, they teach them about various things, and it's just that way of trying to kind of build that education, build that up. And from the trials we've run, both parents and kids love it alike. It's just quite a kind of fun, playful game, and as I say, the adoption and the absorption of the information is enhanced because of that safe space that you're kind of creating. Coming on to personification, so this is something which is quite interesting. So we've recently spun out an indoor air quality monitor, which we've developed. So for those of you that don't know, indoor air quality is a massive potential problem coming down the line. There's some really quite scary studies coming out showing that fetuses of babies actually have particulate matter particles in their brain before they're even born. So everyone focuses on outdoor air pollution because it's really a good way of leveraging the kind of climate crisis and talking about that. But what people don't know is that indoor air can often be a lot more polluted than outdoor air. So we took this challenge up. We've developed this kind of modular technology connected solution, which is, the idea is you place these bases in different rooms. They give you a baseline reading of what's happening. They'll tell you when things are changing. You then move this top unit between the bases. That gives you a kind of higher fidelity sensing. It gives you the screen for kind of real-time notifications. But through the project, we were looking at kind of families as the kind of key driver. We were talking to them about what that feedback loop they kind of want, what that feedback loop they kind of require. And through chatting to the kids, it was really eye-opening because they wanted to take care of their home. They wanted to take control of their home. So what we developed was these little character hats that are kind of NFC chips on them. You plunk it on the device and it completely changes the UX into something which is more character-based, it's more friendly, it's more easy to understand and adopt. So I'll just play this and talk you through it.
At NUCU, we care about the air you breathe. Currently, 9 out of 10 people regularly breathe in poor air in their homes. We're on a mission to change that.
So it has this kind of slight magic. It's magnetic. As soon as you drop it on, it just instantly changes. We launched this at IFA, the kind of Consumer Electronics Show in Berlin, and the amount of people that just walked past, looking at it, as soon as you dropped the ears on, there was a massive smile came off their face and they came over to engage with it.
Nuka can be tailored to your family, learning from you and your environment and allowing you to get on with life without worrying about the air around you.
So what's the really interesting thing about this is that, you have that kind of gamification element where you're allowing, in games you get streaks for good air days, you get streaks for improving your air quality, but there's a much more interesting kind of subtler psychology benefit you get from it as well. What the kids are doing is the kids are basically using the character as a lens for them to have pretty difficult conversations with their parents, because they're able to go up to their parent and say, they're not able to go and say, okay, the indoor air here is really bad, you're hurting me, because they don't have that confidence, they don't have that ability. But if they go up and say, Mum, the bear's sneezing, what can we do to stop the bear sneezing? So it's this way of them being able to kind of take ownership of it, and it's this thing called kind of pester power. If you can get a kid to understand a problem and almost kind of take ownership and governance of fixing that problem, then, as I say, you're much more likely to have the parents adopting that. And it's all you need to do is show a kid once that you put the plastic bottles in the blue bin. If they see you putting it in any bin other than the blue bin, they will be on you, and they are on you for a number of years. So it's in this kind of personification of technology is like a really interesting thing to kind of look at. And you would see this is a kind of a high-tech sensor. It's very Kickstarter friendly. It's something that it's your Google Homes, it's your smart home tech. But by actually increasing that kind of the interactivity and making it kind of more cross-generational, it's really important. And as I say, that it's not new. This has been going on since the days of Tamagotchis, which I believe are back now. But it's that whole kind of interactive model. If you make something kind of character based, if you personify the tech, then the interaction is really interesting, because the kid becomes the kind of the caretaker effectively of that. And as I say, that they're able to have some really interesting conversations and interesting interactions with parents and with grandparents because of that. And then kind of coming back to kind of gamification. So gamification is kind of really key. What we did on a project recently was, we all harped back to our childhood, and we were like, why are kids nowadays, they've got no clue about money? And it's because money's not physical anymore, it's digital. My son's 15 months old. Whenever we go up to a till, he wants the card, and he'll beep it off of anything and everything. He was doing it against the dog's nose the other day. So he just has no concept of what that interaction is. And it's because he doesn't have that, there is physical, money which has value. I save that up over time, that becomes bigger, and then I'm able to spend that. And it's something which has been totally lost. So this is a concept we pulled together for that. You see the egg is locked in its kind of natural state, and it's by the kid completing chores, completing tasks, and it's been signed off by the parent on the app that they're able to unlock that, and there's a character kind of hidden inside of it. Now these characters have NFC chips on them, so that when you take them out and you scan it on the smartphone or the tablet, it then unlocks new missions, new skills, new stories. So it has that kind of ongoing levelling up. And effectively what you can do is you can teach the kid over a period of time that it's that idea of kind of delayed gratification. So it's when we were young, it was you put cash in the piggy bank, you build it up, you smash it open, there's more there than what you effectively would be putting in over time. And it comes back to this really interesting kind of psychology of like the marshmallow experiment. So if any of you have not seen this, it is worth a YouTube, because it is torture for children. It's quite, I'm not going to be sadistic here, but it's quite a funny watch. But the whole premise is that they leave kids in a room with a marshmallow, and they say, right, if you can not eat that marshmallow, then when I come back, I'll give you 2 marshmallows. And the instructor leaves the room, they have a camera on them, and they just watch the kids. And some kids are like straight away grab it, eat it, don't care. Other kids basically will torture themselves for like 10, 15, 20 minutes staring at this, some of them licking it, and it's really interesting. And it's like this kind of idea of like, if you can teach a kid about the benefits of delayed gratification, and as a whole host of benefits, they generally have better exam scores, they have better self-control, they have better mental health. So it's all that kind of good kind of conditioning that you can get through teaching delayed gratification. And that was what we kind of really used as a starting point, and says, right, okay, how do we get that piggy bank smash moment, but from a physical connected product, to really teach kids about delayed gratification. So it's that kind of, you lock the character in, you then have to build up and by kind of saving or doing jobs or doing chores, and then it's that moment of it magically pops open, just allowing you to kind of get that, okay, well, I've done my bit, I've waited time, and I've got something better in return for it. So it's, again, really, really interesting kind of, looking at different play models and looking at tackling that across kind of connected products. So what I would kind of say then is, like, what are you waiting for? Go and play. So if you are kind of within the product design space, then look at this as like an interesting lens to tackle projects, because, if we came to this and just says, right, we want to do something to teach kids about money, it would have probably ended up as an app. It would have probably ended up something quite kind of boring, something quite kind of, unengaging, but it was through that user engagement, through that kind of understanding the power of play, we were able to actually take it to a different level. So thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll be around afterwards if anyone's got any questions.